Here at the Montreal Thematic Meeting on Metropolitan Areas, I am in conversation with Dr. Abel Shumann. Dr. Shumann is an economist with the OECD in the Public Governance and Territorial Development Directorate. He is a specialist of metropolitan governance and of regional growth. Indeed, he has written extensively on the subject. Welcome, good morning.
Welcome.
So, Dr. Shumann, tell me, what happens when a major city and smaller cities become one city region, one metropolitan area? What are the effects of this alliance?
So what we see, of course, is that people start to moving from the smaller city into the bigger city and vice versa on a daily basis. And it's not only people, but it's also businesses that develop business partnerships with each other. And we really see that the smaller city and the bigger city start and to grow into each other. And that, of course, has important consequences for policymakers, because when the cities were individual cities and they were functionally not integrated, then it was, of course, possible for policymakers to really view their city as an individual subject. But now, when a metropolitan area develops, it is actually important that policies are coordinated. So policymakers really have to start to think in this bigger metropolitan context, and it's not possible anymore to only develop policies for one part of the metropolitan area. It is necessary to come up with policies that cover the entire metropolitan area.
Now, you're an economist, so I have to ask you, economically, who prospers? Is it only the city center, or is it the entire region?
That is a difficult question, and I don't think there's a general answer to this. We really have to look at individual cases. And this is, again, a question which very much depends on policy, because it's the role of policymakers to make sure that the entire metropolitan area prospers. So what we can observe, for example, in many metropolitan areas, that you have particular parts of the metropolitan area which are not very well connected to the rest of the metropolitan area. So for people living in such a badly connected area, it's of course very difficult, for example, to commute to the neighborhoods where they can find jobs. So it's really the task of policymakers to make sure that the entire metropolitan area is well connected and can benefit.
And can thrive, okay.
Yeah.
You said, if I'm not mistaken, that organizations dedicated to metropolitan governance are common but often lack power.
Yes.
Okay, so what authority do they need?
So what we observe in general, that by far the biggest majority of organizations dedicated to metropolitan governance, they are basically informal associations. So this is where mayors took the initiative and got together. And we think this is something which is in general great. So it's really good when people from the different parts of the metropolitan area talk to each other. But of course, at some point it becomes necessary to not only to talk to each other, but to make sure that your policies are actually aligned, and that requires competences. And this is in particular important, for example, in the field of land use policy, but also in the field of transport policy, especially public transport networks. They have to be really integrated to function well. And lastly, also in the field of regional economic development. So when you promote your city or your metropolitan area, you cannot just promote your small part. You have to promote the metropolitan area as a whole, and this only works well if you have some organization that actually has the necessary competences to do this.
And the powers.
Exactly, the powers.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Abel Shumann, economist with the OECD.